Nero held the greatest party ever seen in the ancient world.
Deepa Bhatia's insightful gaze misses nothing, whether she's directing or editing a film. In a week when the news cycle was saturated with dancing celebrities, her 15-year-old documentary Nero's Guests made me realize just how little attention we pay to the lives lost to the agrarian crisis still unfolding in India. The film available on YouTube is a reminder that in a country where excess is being romanticized and celebrated, we haven't bothered to acknowledge over 557 farmer suicides in Maharashtra's Amravati just this year. Deepa spent 5 years making this film, and it continues to remind us to not just be aware of the Neros amongst us, but ask if we are Nero's guests. Her recent film First Act on Amazon Prime is an equally insightful study of child actors in an industry insensitive to their well being. In this unboxed conversation, she discusses why it is so important for her to rekindle human empathy via her films while also lending her editing brilliance to blockbusters like My Name is Khan, Rock On, Kai Poche, Rais, and many more. Deepa Bhatia, welcome to my space. And it would take me an hour to kind of encapsulate your journey as a editor, but I wanted to start with Deepa Bhatia, the filmmaker, and especially two films. To start with Nero's Guests, which was made, if I'm not mistaken, almost 15 years ago, right? 2009.
Yes, 2009.
And in a week where the media's attention was completely focused on a certain celebrity event, this film and its title made so much sense, and it still remains relevant, till date. And after I watched the film, where you have tried to kind of document the tragedy of over 200,000 farmer suicides, you've tried to document that in a span of like 56, 57 wrenching minutes of truth telling. And when I finished watching it, I knew I would remember like certain moments from that film. Um, the poetry of hunger and death by this farmer who took his life. And this one stunning moment of silence where you see the street performer who stops whiplashing himself, and you see his eyes, which are hopeless and hopeful, and you see a fleeting image of his wife and child, and this long shot of the three of them disappearing into a metro which doesn't recognize their humanity, and the footage of the farmer who's swallowed a pesticide and has just come into a government hospital. The rage and the grief of P. Sainath as he tries to contextualize the reasons behind the agrarian crisis. And what made this whole film so powerful is that you have disappeared into the stories of the farmers and their grieving, families. And I just wanted to know how and when you decided to collaborate with P. Sainath to make this film. And what were the reasons? What was it like? What were those 5 years like when you spent making this film? And how tough was it to distill so many lives and deaths in just one film?
I began my professional journey or educational journey at Sapphires at SCM, which is a course where a lot of people from film, actually, a lot of women from film are. And P. Sainath was my professor there. And it was at that time he was working on Everybody Loves a Good Drought. And he would be traveling. He was doing the series on the poorest districts of India for Times of India. He was then with TOI, and he would be away and he would come back. He's gone to Kalahandi and he's come straight to class. And the impact that Sainath made on me, and I think every student in SEM, was very, very deep. And he's, he's your conscience keeper. He's a reminder of what people in the media, as professionals, what we need to do. So when I left Sapphires and I finished my course, and I was at working with Govind Nihalani, and I went through those years of my training, being an assistant director to Govindji, but Sainath and I remained in touch. And I think a lot of people wanted this film made because Sainath is so charismatic and so obviously such a brilliant journalist. And I don't know what it was, but Sainath said that I should be doing it. And I didn't have enough experience. I wasn't, I don't think I was capable or ready, but he just entrusted me and felt I could try it. And so I got involved with him and we started traveling together. I didn't think of the film. Rima, I didn't think of the film, and I think that was the good part. I thought of my education, I thought of understanding what's happening. And each time he was traveling to the countryside, he would be there. Jaideep Hardikar, wonderful journalist from Nagpur, and I would tag along. And it was, I think, 2, 3 years of just traveling with Sainath. I think the film was very secondary. At some point there was a talk, we should do it. And, but I think I just enjoyed the process of learning, being part of that journey and absorbing, because it was not my expertise. It wasn't my area of expertise. So it took me a while to grasp. And we shot very extensively. We shot Sainath in Minnesota when he was interacting with American farmers. We shot him in various parts of India and various issues, economic, political, lots of things which make a film like that. But somewhere along the way, I began to distill what is the story I'm capable of telling. And that was of inequality. That this is the story. Right now, that is the story I'm capable, and I can gather my material and tell it effectively. So I think my inexperience was a plus, because I never thought of, I just went very honestly and organically. And somewhere on the table, we started putting it together. It took me a while. It took me over 1.5 years to edit it, because I was also understanding storytelling, and also I was understanding, and I was also realizing that it's a, viewers are very heartless, and to make them feel for the families, it was to make that impact, because we are so, there's ennui. You don't give a damn about anybody today. You don't care what's happening. And you get your water supply, you get your electricity. I would remember being, when people talk about things like reservation, and we were in a village in Akola, and it was about 6 in the evening, and I think the exams were around the corner, and there was no power, and all the children were sitting and studying in these lamps. And I was like, how are you going to expect anyone to compete when your whole resource belt is so unequal? These things. So I think really the question was how to make a different class of people feel for somebody who are their own. They are their own countrymen. I think that is the lens with which I thought I should look at the story, to make people feel. And then Sainath and his ability to decode data, to analyze it, to contextualize it. I think then we just went to try to capture that emotion. Rima, I really didn't think, I didn't know what I was even making. I was just following my heart, and distilling what I had, to be able to, in a succinct way, say best what I thought I was capable of, what I could grasp. I must say that I wasn't, I was still learning. So I picked what I thought I could tell. And that is how Nero's Guest kind of came. When I heard him first narrate that story in the talk at Xavier's College, I couldn't hold back. I was moved so much, and I just knew at that's going to be the backbone of the film. So some things, creatively they emerge, and just desire to impact people and try to make them feel. That
Right.
was what I set out to do.
Yeah. And yet, 15 years later, the agrarian crisis is far more complex, far more widespread, and the tragedies keep on spooling. If I
Yes.
remember correctly, like in 2023, in Maharashtra alone, we saw almost 2,850 farmer
Yeah,
suicides.
there were nearly 3,000 deaths.
Yeah,
Yes,
nearly
yes.
3,000. And have you thought of going back to the story and maybe doing another sequel, is not the right word, but a continuation of the story?
I mean, we've been talking about it, Sainath and me, but there's so much more that, like, he's now come out with a book The Last Heroes, and we've been talking about it, and I'm looking how to, because that's again something you need to. It's again that same thing of being able to people like today. Freedom is like voting on a page or saying a like on Twitter, and you think you've engaged. But when you look back and you look at the sacrifices of those who fought, I think there's a need to remind people of that. I'm feeling that because I feel there's a complacency in all of us. We take what we have for granted. So yeah, we keep talking about. I mean, I meet Sainath regularly, and we keep thinking of this and thinking of that. So maybe, yes, maybe I haven't visited also in a few years the countryside. So I think, who knows? I mean, who knows what we'll think of? But definitely looking at his book right now as the next thing that I want to work on.
Yeah. Coming to first act, what again fascinated me about this film was again the fact that you kind of disappeared into the lives of these child actors, and we saw a little glimpse of you in Nero's Guest, but here I don't remember seeing much of you in the film.
Yeah.
And but yet, this editor's eye is there, and you kind of capture that one micro expression, that long shot of a family or a close up, which tells us more than what is being said on the screen. And you just let the children and their parents tell you the larger story by a very little moments. But being the person that you are, how tough was, I'm sure this question has been asked to you earlier, how tough was it to keep yourself detached from what was unfolding in front of you, especially when parents are trying to push their, kids into uncomfortable dresses that they don't want to wear, or making them perform when they're not in a mood to perform? How did you kind of distance yourself from that?
At such times, I never cared about the show. I never cared about whether I get the material. I was all through the filming counseling them. If I saw something that I thought wasn't the right way to go about it, I would always tell them. I never thought, I mean, I thought if I can course correct while we are filming, that'll be the best. And it happened in a couple of cases. I don't want to take names, but there were younger children, girls who were coming of age, like teenage age, and the kind of content that happens with the crime shows. And suddenly this girl is now done 4 episodes of being a rape victim. And I remember talking to the mother and telling her, if I find that you are repeatedly putting her in this kind of a thing, I will cause great trouble to you. I don't really care. But if I know this happens again, and then I think then we had a conversation about it. And I told her that I've been meeting many children, and it's not very comfortable if you repeatedly engage them, because there are no intimacy coordinators. There's not any kind of counseling. Even Sarika spoke to me about this, where she often said that it was very, very difficult to distill and to separate what happens on screen as a child and to process that your mother's dying now you're crying. But she said I would get scared. I was impacted by that. She spoke to me extensively about it. So knowing from other child actors that when you grow up and when you're in that situation, there are many things which got resolved actually as we were filming, which made me happy, and then there were many that did not. Despite me trying to say, don't do this, don't do it like that, don't overtrain your child. I would say, I met Mukesh Chabra, such a big casting director, and he said he likes children just to be natural. Don't overcoach them, let them be who they are. So I would, ensure that I was crisscrossing the information that I was also gathering from the experts like casting directors and filmmakers, and kind of passing it on, so it wasn't a, but I think some parents tend to be more desperate and don't, I think, have a very good sense of right and wrong. And in those cases, that kind of material then just emerges, even you can't escape it because it's, they're too thick in it, so it's very difficult to, you can't, So sometimes those things happen. Many times we averted a lot of things also, which is, which gives me some sort of satisfaction, and sometimes parents are keen to listen because they don't know better. So a lot of times I would make some parents meet Amol. I would tell him, share how you go about it, just some knowledge sharing, and then things would get better for those for those particular stories,
Right.
See, we have a certain amount of children in the film that we followed, but I followed many more. So I was like tracking more than 15 families actually,
Hmm.
yeah, so
And
that's there.
you worked extensively with children before also, you and Amol
Yeah.
both.
As in, I mean, I've been an observer to Amol's passion for their well-being. It's something which we like because see, when you're on film sets, you just assume that's the only way of working, which
Hmm.
is that it'll be 10-hour shifts, it'll be like that. Kids will wait when they are called on set. We accept it because that's what we've seen. It takes someone of some kind of uh, certain caliber to look and say, "Hello, how has this been accepted? How are we allowing ourselves to let children be on set for 10, 10, 12 hours
Hmm.
without adequate breaks, without a proper system, and he did that with Stanley Kadabba. He's like, okay, if I feel this isn't the way to make films, then what is the way to make films with children? Then he created a model. And I was in fact, Rima, I must tell you, I was like, what are you up to? I was very dismissive of what Amol was doing because I was doing My Name is Khan and, Stanley Kadabba. These are two very different kind of projects. And I was like, no, this won't work. And he said, I'll take 1 year. I mean, I'll shoot Saturday to Saturday, 4 hours a day, and let's see what comes out of it. The Stanley Kadabba story. I mean, that's how I first read what you write also, because I remember how beautifully you wrote about that film. But, so I think that when he questioned something that was just fundamental to our business, and proved that it can be done differently and has done
Right.
it through every film. He
Hmm.
just now did a commercial for Camel and he directed a commercial for Camel Paints and he was not the producer, but he's like, no, child on set for 3 hours, then home, then school. And we did it. It was not, it's very easy if you
Hmm.
put the focus. So I think he put his money where his mouth is. And
Hmm.
that made me realize that this is something worth kind of fighting for because it's not the norm at all,
Right.
you know.
Right. Right.
So then I said, let me check. So then we started going with cameras, and I said, maybe we are too protective about children and whatever. So
Hmm.
I started visiting a lot of film sets, a lot of TV sets. Not all of it is in the show, but I actually went and saw the working hours, the timings, and the kind of callousness that the industry is quite sort of, I would say known for in some ways, towards children. So that was the genesis. So I
Right.
have to credit Amol for just, igniting that curiosity and then showing the way,
Hmm.
you know, and then it was easy for me to get
Yeah.
onto it.
Yeah. This is obviously like a meeting of minds and of sensibilities in your case. Like, how did you,
Yes.
if I may ask, how did you meet and how long
Oh,
back was that?
that was in 94, 5, I think. He was writing a pilot and I was assisting I was studying at Sapphires and I was in my Diwali break. So my cousin actually was shooting a pilot and he said, come on as an assistant. And I was dying for on-set experience and Amol had written that pilot actually. So that's how we met. And then, of course, over the year, then I think that just grew into, I was in awe of, I mean, I'm very much in awe of writers, I have to admit. And I think that Amol was, seeing his way with words. And then he was a painter. He had a lovely book called India Item, which was his sketches and his observations about society, about art. And it was so magnificent, that India Item book, and it drew me to his talent and his mind, and I think that was that was very big attraction because I was like, here's somebody who's so stimulating, and so well versed with cinema and so I think that love for film, I think love for all things creative, it was a very natural draw. And
Hmm.
that's, yeah, I got married, I think, in 98. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. Uh, the fact that children's films and children's stories are kind of disappearing from mainstream cinema is something that I don't think concerns a lot of people. But
Mhm.
both of you have tried to kind of tweak that
Mhm.
thing a bit. And you may have heard this from a lot of parents that, Tare Zameen Par and the work you did in that film, all the work that went into making that film was done by both of you. Uh, that changed a lot of parents and a lot of, it changed me as a parent and how I parented my son. You must have heard a lot of stories during that time. Would you care to share maybe one which has remained with
Uh,
you?
As in, it was like, a little earlier, like much before the film actually happened, and we were like researching. It just started how you start thinking. You think about school, you think about Namol, and I would go to schools, regular schools, and through some access, hang around a classroom, and you could see everything wrong. Because that time, people were not so aware of multiple intelligence. So people were still judging children only by the yardstick of academics. So it was a very oppressive atmosphere. If you were a person interested in music or art or anything different from math and whatever else rote learning shit that kids were being taught. And you could see the children. So, and I remember being in a school in Bandra, and it was a 9-year-old classroom. And we both came back and said, God, there's a crisis brewing. Like nobody's recognizing how stressed children are getting, as because it was also the time when more and more parents are becoming more and more ambitious. The world had changed. You wanted to send their children abroad. All this was a developing trend. And yet when we took that film script to so many people, like in the sense, people would say, who's gonna watch this film, because it's about a kid. And I remember somebody telling Amol, "Kya first 5 minutes the child is looking in a gutter. What is in this film?" Or the hero's entries at interval. So these kind of the notions that our film industry has about things, they are difficult to penetrate and get past. So I mean, I'm in that sense grateful that such a big star lent his weight behind that film, and we got there. And then subsequently when it released, I cannot tell you how many people from our film business, well-known people, calling Amol and saying, "It's my story, it's my story, it's my story," because a lot of them actually tend not to be academically bright, or they tend to be talented, creative, interested in other things, and had a very rough time in school. So a lot of well-known actors, people from music, and but the thing I was in fact telling you just before we started was, I remember traveling in a rickshaw with Amol, and by then people had begun recognizing him, and the rickshaw driver telling Amol that, this is my story. Like, I wanted to be a painter, and my mother, economic circumstances forced me to. And I thought he can identify with it. That means it was universal. It's a universal story of people just looking to do what they love and nobody letting you do it, whether
Right.
it's school or it's home, and just judging you by one yardstick. And Amol always says, no, the one thing we judge the children is by something which is man-made: numbers, language. This is not a skill to climb a tree. It's not a skill of, braiding your hair. It's not a skill of playing with a football. These are life skills. But you judge them by two things manufactured, created by
Hmm.
humans, right? In a way of, so all those things are there. Now, of course, things are much better, and there's so much more attention given to people with, there's diversity, there's inclusion, there's,
Hmm.
so it's nice. I mean, things have gotten better from then, from that very dark time, when people wouldn't accept that children could be different or could have different interests or could learn differently. All of these three things. Like, I don't know why the onus on learning is on the child and not on the teacher.
Right,
Like
right.
that lovely line, if I can't learn the way you teach, will you teach the way I can learn?
Hmm.
Like that's the thing. That adapting is in a classroom of 50, it's asking a lot of a teacher. I get
Right,
it, but you
right.
know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Stanley Kadibba was also a very pertinent film about the crisis of street children. And are
Yes.
you going to make some more films for children, about children?
We've been writing, but like, when you began, you asked me about how difficult it is. So it's like after so much, we still face. I mean, we wrote a really beautiful. I mean, I thought Amol really did a lot of work with teens, because teens are also just absolutely like the eighth, ninth, 10th grader is my absolute favorite age category, because they're so complex and they're so beautiful and they know so much. They think they know so much, but they don't. They actually know so much and their parents don't. It's a beautiful age group, and we've been trying to do a high school show for some time, but yeah, still struggling to get backing. But yeah, that's what Amol has spent the last. I'll send it to you to read on a side note. But yeah, that's something which we spent the last almost 2.5 years developing. Again, it's come out of a lot of research, spending time in schools, workshopping with that age group, writing with them. They participated. The stories are theirs. What happens to in school they've shared. So that's like cooking till
Right,
somebody
right.
supports it.
Yeah, your editing genius has been extensively written about. I was researching and I found like so many beautiful pieces that people have written about. Uh, the cut, like there was a Renu Saluja cut now, there's a Deepa Bhatia cut, and there's cohesion in it, and there is heart in it, and there's like these micro observations are there in that. And you started with Govind Nihalani, and you said that you're largely self-taught. And
Yes.
uh, what is very visible, and what you've also said, is that the preserving the soul of a film is very important for you. But having worked across the spectrum, genres and different production houses, makers, um, what happens when you are alone with a film in a
Mm.
in a editing studio and you find that there is no soul in the film that you're cutting?
Yeah. So I mean, if you've taken up something, like I look at it in the same way that I look at, say, a child, because the thing is, the job of an editor is to make the film the best it can be. You can't judge it because you took it up, you committed to it, like the way you're committing. So if your child is errant, or if your child is not, you know what I mean, you're still going to give it your all. It's the same thing. So yeah, it's harder, but I still think I can still struggle through that if I have a tuning with my director. So I've had some films which have just not worked, but if the love is there between me and my director, we're giving it our best. It can go right, it can go wrong, it'll go left, it'll go, whatever. But if that tuning is there and you gave it your best shot, then that in itself is a very satisfying, and then I'm ready for the whatever flack we may get for something not
Hmm.
working, because so that for me is that, like, make it the best. Do not, just because something is not very very strong, don't not work on it.
Hmm.
You have to, your purity as a technician, as a, like, I always say the director has two arms, his cameraman and his editor. The two people who collaborate closely in telling the story. And I think you're duty bound to give it your all, to look at the footage, to make the film the best it can be, and then you can sleep a good night's sleep.
Yeah,
That's very important to me. My
yeah,
conscience is very important to me,
yeah.
and that's how I've done it. Yeah. Now I pick less projects that I'm not very very sure about, because now my, like, it's precious. What I do each day is precious, and it matters. So I try to be careful and engage in something that I care about. Earlier also it was like a learning curve for me, because Rima, people like I remember, I'll share this thing with you. I was editing Class for Oshim, the Netflix series, and Oshim was directing, Oshim Aluwalia, whom I love his work. I mean, Miss Lovely is one of my favorite films. I had edited Daddy for him also, the Gauli biopic or whatever. And he was like, we were editing, and he was like, I can't believe the same person who can edit for me can also edit for Karan Johar. Like, what is this? Like, because the aesthetics are different. But my point is just that's what I want to be able to do. I want to become the person that film needs. So I love mixing my genres. I like not to be slotted. I don't want somebody to say I'm commercial. I don't want somebody to say, I want to be able to do
Everything.
everything, because it teaches you.
Hmm.
Like, I'm currently working on a we're working on a feature doc, where I'm working with my my producers Finish, and when I'm cutting, he's like, the slowness of the European aesthetic, trying to get that right so that they connect. And when I'm cutting here, say for Rahul Dholake, I'm doing Agni, and he's like, come on, we need to be fast and punchy, and so, but you have to be able to do all of those
All of
things. You
that.
have to be agile, so I
Yeah.
enjoy that. I enjoy taking that learning, unlearning, learning, unlearning.
Hmm.
That's fun. Otherwise, I'll
Uh,
become complete.
does it help you in editing that you're a director, and does it also work vice versa?
Yes, I think both really service each other, because I really like mixing up. Again, like I said, if I do editing for too long, I think I make stagnate. So I was now, oh, I'm always writing something, I'll produce it. Okay, great. Then I'm like, I want to make something of my own. Then I go into that zone. So that just that they all these things help each other. I don't see myself like as a technician. I see
Hmm.
myself as somebody who has a little more to offer than that. So, I like reading, I like adapting, I like writing, I like all of these things. But yes, editing is like my first love. It's something I can never stop doing. And I've often said this, but Amol always says if I'm not editing something, I physically fall ill. I'll either get a viral or I need to spend some time at the table.
Mm.
For me, it's very meditative. It's very meditative.
Mm.
So I always make sure that I'm doing some kind of editing, but I enjoy juggling roles.
Right. You said in many interviews that, the first time that you found yourself on, the editing
Mm.
table, you just felt at home immediately. What
Yes.
was it about this whole
I don't
process?
know. That's actually, so bizarre because you asked me about how I learned. So I was assisting Govind Nihalani as a director, assistant director, because obviously that was my first love, and that's what I wanted to do. And he was doing this film called Sanshodhan. It was for I think it was NFDC and UNICEF together. And it was a film on the 33rd Amendment to the Constitution on reservations and panchayats. And it had Manoj Vajpayee and Vanya Joshi, and we
I
were
saw
we
that
we
film, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I was assisting on that. We finished shooting that, and then we had that was at the cusp of the technology changing because we had stopped editing on Steenbeck, and the first of the Avids, which was non-linear editing on a computer, the first of those systems had come to Bombay, and people were using it, and people from advertising were using it. So we had a person well versed with technology who was editing the film for Govindji, but I think he didn't have an appetite for the long form. So he was more you do an ad, you're done in 3 days, and suddenly he was like, God, this scene after scene. So all this material was sort of, digitized, sorted, and synced and on this computer, and he wouldn't come. And I would see Govinji come every day to the studio. It was Rakesh Roshan's studio, Videocraft, I remember, in Santa Cruz. And he would come and nothing was there for him to see. He would paste, 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 and he would go away. So I was like, all this material is there. I was like 23 or 24 or something. I was like, you know what? Let me try editing. So I was like, poor, my director suffering. And I'm like, just waiting. He's waiting for it to be done. So I didn't know. I was computer phobic, very computer phobic, because I never owned a computer. I didn't, we didn't. So I would tell the attendant in the office, in the studio, to open the machine, to open the project. And, the material is stored in bins, scene wise. And I was like, I would open the scene and then I was like, let me try, scenes which have very few shots, like 4 shots. So that'll be easy for me to cut. If there's 20 shots, I don't know how to do it. So I just sat and over a month, 2 months, I would just take the simple stuff and cut it. Just as an exercise, as an AD with the machine and the studio booking. And then I think after some time I showed it to him. And he was like, this is pretty decent. So I was like, okay, whatever, use whatever. That was the end of it, I thought. And then about a year later, he was doing Hazar Chaurasi Ki Maan, which was Jayaji's comeback film. And he said, Tum edit karo. I was like, what? I don't know this. And he said, you do it. And if you mess up, I've spoken to Renu. And Renu has said she'll come and do the fine cut. And I had that safety net. He gave me that safety net. Suddenly I said, okay, what do I risk? I'll try it. And I tried it and I sat on the table. I swear it was like, I just knew what to do. I don't know how. I had never done this before. I haven't assisted anybody, but I really felt very safe and very comfortable in that role. And he never had to call Renu, thankfully.
Mm.
And then I just got 3 to 4 films for him after that. And it's really him. So I think I'm a little fortunate with my mentors because he found that quality in me that I didn't know I possessed. With Sainath also, it was him who said that,
Mhm.
you should keep directing this. So I think I'm fortunate. Then Amol also constantly motivating and pushing me. So I've been lucky with the people who kind of, encouraged me to take a chance. And
Mm.
then I've grabbed it.
So I just wanted to ask you, so this whole idea of learning, and I know that Renu Saluja was a big inspiration, even though I don't think you ever met her.
I did.
You did.
I did. I was very fortunate. It was, I'll tell you, she was editing Nagesh Kukunur's film, Rockford. And she was they were mixing the film at Raj Kamal Studios, which has a mixing room, which is where Govindji's office and my editing studio was. And she wanted to cut the trailer. So she wanted to use my machine. And she asked Govindji, can I just, because I'm mixing, right there, and I can just come up and finish the trailer. And I was like, okay, you can use my machine, but I will be sitting in on the session. So Nagesh and Ilahi and Renu were very kind. So for those 4 days, I hung around the studio like discreetly, and she would be working, and she would actually because I lived in Bandra and so did she. She would actually give me a car ride home. And that 1 hour that I spent with her over those 4 days was, I mean, I still remember every one of the lessons that she, in that short span, whether it was about how do you convince a director to align to your point of view, how do, because sometimes directors don't have the objectivity and you need to push to get what you want done, in the edit. And she guided me on that. She spoke to me about things like visual memory, for an editor, like when you see the footage, to be so disciplined while watching it that every little, so if the director tells you, there was a take where his hand was here, you should be able to say, yeah, it was take number 5 or take number 7. So she taught me the importance of that. She kind of advised me that hang on to that ability, develop that skill in yourself as an editor. And I pride myself to have been like sort of really focused on, knowing my material thoroughly and she spoke about that. I discovered she had such a sense of humor. She was so funny, and she was speaking about how, as you get senior as an editor, you don't get, like, I used to get distracted if some assistant is moving behind me. But she spoke about, that you've got to cut all of that out. And when you're in the scene, so I mean, endless, those 4 days up, the return home with her. And, she shared so much. She was so generous. And more than anything, Rima, her work. What an extraordinary editor. What an extraordinary editor. And you know that not from only her work and as in her films, but you know that from her directors. Every one of them swears by her. They swear because finally, these things are quiet, private communication between the director and editor. Only he knows what you do for the film. It's and I never talk about it. I will never say there was this film and it was shit and I turned it around. Never. We are discreet people because it's whatever. It's part of our job. So, but I remember Kundan Shah talking about her. I remember Vinod Chopra talking about her. Sudhir has been so expressive on social media, being married to her and also, So you see the respect. You see the respect. Wow. I mean, if we could be 1% of that kind of, amazing. I remember again just a small anecdote, but in Rajkamal when she came and there was a man, Narayan Mama. Narayan Mama used to be the Steenbeck attendant in Rajkamal over the years, right from the 60s or whatever. And when she came to edit on Avid in Govindji's office, that trailer of Rockford, Narayan Mama every day would come and say, Renu madam, chai. And the izzat. See, izzat is everything, the respect. I mean, that was what I discovered with her, that she was a class apart because nobody has spoken ill of Rain. I mean, that if I could, I mean, whatever, yeah, long, long road to her kind of both nature and her gift. I mean, the way she could edit and on Steenbeck, she made the transition. So she's been a huge, there were not many women editors also back then, when I started. So she was a huge inspiration. And I think, like I was telling you, it's always people talking about her. I would hear from this person. I was like, wow, to command that kind of respect. I think that was the thing about Rain, love and people loved her, people respected her. So yeah, she's a big role model for me.
Before I leave you, I just want to ask you, I have to ask you this question. Both you and Amolji, both of you have kind of seen the best and the worst of the industry. And you have triumphed against great odds. And what are some of the lessons that you have taken away from this journey?
See, I think that when we began, I think somewhere you're like a bit of a babe in the wood. वो बोलते हैं ना, मतलब आपको वो लगान देना पड़ेगा जब आप इंडस्ट्री में एक अग्नि परीक्षा बोलो, whatever you call it, there's going to be there's a price, and you pay that price, and so did we, because I think that we didn't know enough, I think, about the nature of this world, and yeah, you have to overcome it, and you have to and I think the best thing you can do is to just respond with quality work. I mean, there's nothing else that one is left to do, one can do, and I still think be grateful for what opportunity, rather than thinking of what opportunity was taken away or was lost. It's better to think of what remains, and what remains is a beautiful film got made. And it remains unpolluted, untouched, and it impacted people. And that was the whole idea of those kind of films, and even later, it's not just that, you continue to have ups and downs, because I think that we're not exactly the kind of people who play by certain kinds of rules. Our interests are in different sectors, so I mean, you have to be prepared for this kind of a slightly rough ride, and even sometimes when I'm editing, I've had those kind of very rough encounters. Maybe aesthetically you don't agree with the producer, maybe even with the star, or with whatever's going on. It happens. But I think that those, you again, like I said, try to retain those experiences. And rather than saying that somebody did something wrong to you, it's better to think, what did you do wrong, learn from it, and apply it to your next sort of job. So that's how I try to. I mean, how much to complain? You can't complain. You've got to get on with it.
Right.
Uh, so yeah, so it's fine. I mean, I
Yeah.
like I said, it's okay. It's all
Yeah.
good.
So I just want to tell you that the one thing that has remained, I think that nobody has been able to take away from both of you, is this innocence and this intrinsic goodness that shines forth through your work and through everything that you do together and alone. And I just hope that you'll keep making films because you have so much insight and sensitivity, and we need that in cinema today. We, like you said, we need to reinvent the wheel. We need to look at the world with fresh eyes, and you have that. And I hope that you continue making the films that you want to make easily and without stress in the near future.
That's the nicest thing you could have said, Rima. And it's such a pleasure talking to you. I've always loved the way you write, and like I've kept screenshots of things that you've written over the years. So that's special to be engaged in this conversation with you.
Thank you so much for giving me time and for being so wonderful. So, so wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Hi, this is Rima, and if you liked what you just saw, then do like and subscribe because remember, this is a safe space for people to talk, share their stories, to hear each other, make some time in their busy lives for unboxed conversations.